Fáilte Cháirde Gael. This is episode 74 of the Rebel Matters podcast, and it's a special episode, first of all because it's coming out midweek, and second of all because it is of particular relevance to the events that are unfolding in America as we speak. On Monday the 25th of May, George Floyd was publicly and horrifically murdered by a cop, and the subsequent video went viral. And as news of his murder spread throughout the country, it has sparked off an uprising which is currently ongoing, and protests have spread from city to city and further afield into other countries as well. There's a lot of information going around on social media and a lot of news stories coming in via the traditional media sources, but I wanted to speak to someone who was on the ground as such out there, and I'm very grateful to Devin, who set up this podcast with Tai Carpenter, who is involved with an organisation called Don't Shoot Portland, which has been providing essential services and representing the community that they are based in ever since they were formed in 2014 by Tai's mum. We talked a little bit about how Don't Shoot Portland came to be in existence in the first place, and this is a very important conversation to listen to if you want to find out more about the political environment that led up to the murder of George Floyd and also many other Black people in America at the hands of the police service there. We talked about the important work that Don't Shoot Portland have been doing in the past and also right now as we speak, because they're playing a crucial role in getting people out of jail and helping people who are being arrested and people who are going missing, and helping to organise the protests that are ongoing on a daily basis now in America. We also addressed the issue of agitators going into the protests and turning them violent to try and undermine the movement. We also talked about different ways in which you can show your solidarity and your support to the movement that is gathering pace and that has the ultimate aim to take racism out of society, not only in America, but everywhere that it exists. The reason that this episode is coming out on a Wednesday evening as opposed to a Friday is I wanted to get it out as soon as possible, so there's no reading at the end of the episode as there usually is, but we'll continue that on the next episode. And I just want to say a massive thank you to Devin, who set this connection with Tai up. A massive thank you to Tai, who took the time out of her really busy schedule at the minute to record this podcast. It's a hectic time for anybody who's involved in the protests and the movement over there right now. And also, as usual, a massive thank you to everyone who has been supporting the Rebel Matters podcast on Patreon. For anybody who wants to become a patron of the show, then you can go to patreon.com/Rebel Matters, where you can see the different tiers of support for the podcast. And for anyone who is new to the show, then you can hear all the rest of the episodes on rebelmatters.ie, Spotify, YouTube, the podcast app, iTunes, and anywhere else that podcasts usually live. Before we get stuck into the episode with Tai, I would like to add that what's happening in North America right now demands solidarity and support from anyone who is against racism and oppression. This conversation is a very important one to listen to, and it's a very important one to be a part of, but we're only going to see real change when people take real actions. So it's essential that you don't just listen to this episode and then forget about it. We have an overtly racist system of detention for people who come to Ireland as asylum seekers in the system of direct provision, and that needs to be taken down. So listen to this conversation, take it on board, show your support for what's happening in the movement against racism in North America in whatever way you can. And Tai talks about different ways in which you can do that, but it's also absolutely essential that you have a look around in your immediate environment and get your friends on board as well and figure out together what you can do to take down racism and oppression in your own locality. The brutal murder of George Floyd has sparked an uprising that's spreading all across America and into other countries as well. And now there is a lot of momentum behind the anti-racist movement. So this is the time to take action and put your weight behind that momentum so that real change can come from what is an absolutely horrific situation. And last but not least, it's very important that we keep the friends and family of George Floyd in mind while you're listening to this episode and while you're deciding on what action that you would like to take to show your solidarity and support for this uprising, as well as the friends and families of the other people who have lost their lives since the civil unrest has kicked off. Once you've listened to this episode, and if you've found it useful, then share it around on your social media account and send it to your friends, because the more people that are involved in this conversation, the better. And the more we talk about it and the more light that we shine on the systematic and violent racism that exists in every society today, then the sooner we can make it a thing of the past. Acáirte Gael, enjoy this conversation with Tai Carpenter. Thanks very much for taking the time to come on the podcast. I know that it's a extraordinary time and a very busy time for you guys over there. And I'm just really grateful to, as I was saying before we started recording, to be able to speak to you and get a more of a longer form perspective on what's happening there at the minute, because there really is avalanche of information coming through the media at the minute, and it's kind of hard to get a grasp of exactly what's happening. When I was thinking about, can you tell me a little bit about what kind of work that Don't Shoot PDX do there?
Yeah, so Don't Shoot Portland was founded in 2016 by my mom, actually, Teresa Rayford. She is a very prominent Black Lives Matter protester here in Portland, Oregon. It started after my cousin, he was 19 years old, and he was killed in gun violence in downtown Portland. He was attending a music concert and got stuck in the crossfire. And my mom, when she wanted accountability for why, and he was a straight A student, he was in all these after school programs. And you see a lot of programs centering around youth, if they're in marginalized neighborhoods or, in communities that don't get quite the access as others, and he was involved in all these programs, these city funded agencies. And when he was murdered, everyone showed up for the eulogy, there were some tears, and then that was it. And my mom, that wasn't enough for her. So she started going to City Hall. She became more engaged because she wanted to find out how Black kids were dying at such a high rate, and there was no investigation. We still don't know who murdered him. And she began to find out, as she dug more into the system, that it was more agencies that were put in place to do these things, but they were actually making money off of the racial injustices that they were put in place to advocate for, you know what I mean? But they were taking the money instead. And I had no idea that there was a system of corruption like that before. I would see a nonprofit or an agency and be like, oh, I'm sure they're helping kids. I'm sure they're helping the neighborhoods that they're in. On the surface, it looks like that, but nonprofits and things like that, it's a very hard game to see where your money is going, who you're actually supporting, who are the people that are running the organization. Do their morals reflect yours? Are they part of the status quo and they are literally just capitalizing and exploiting? Or are they really there to help? And so the more that my mom did this work, she began to demand audits from our local government, which, basically to just see their recommendations on the money they've been given and the results that we've had. It seemed like we were taking in more money for policing, having cops in schools, things like that, and kids were still dying. So it became a thing where she had to found the organization just so that we could have the resources in order to educate our public about, hey, Portland public schools, there's been lead in your school system for years. The kids are sick. The teachers are sick. There were reports that were being ignored about kids not even wanting to be in the building, teachers not wanting to be in the building, and they were all ignored. And once we founded the Don't Shoot Portland, we started being able to make changes like that happen, and legislative change happen as well by going to the Capitol and sort of just advocating and standing on those issues and not letting down. Now it's evolved into, and that was with social justice work. Once we began going out into the streets to protest, especially after 2016 when Donald Trump became president, we noticed there was a very big uptick in hate crimes. This is why we became really resilient in our organizing, because we wanted to make sure that we were leading the call for our movement. We weren't asking for other people to defend our lives or to lead protests or statements. It needed to come from us. And in that same way, whenever you do take to the streets, there's people there that will hit you. There are people there that are saying, if I see those protesters, they better not get in front of my car because I will hit them, I'll drive them over, etc. And we've been threatened with harm. But that's also where our biggest implementation of art came in. Because once we started bringing young kids into our center, in our community, it's a community for advocacy that we have. And we bring young kids in and teach them printmaking, screen printing, all sorts of cool stuff. And once we do that, we take them to the streets with banners and signs that they've made. So it became our way of saying, hey, the children are showing their art. We're showing art. You can't control art. And we noticed the difference in reaction once we started implementing social justice art. It made people be like, oh, wow, like I was that person thinking this protester is ruining my day, when really they're just trying to express something, oppression. And we're trying to do it through non-violent direct action.
So is Don't Shoot Portland kind of a combination of like a lobbying group and an activist group and a kind of a community organization that does things for the community that it's based in essence?
Yes, we have a legal resource clinic. So before COVID happened, we were holding eviction clinics, expungement clinics for cannabis convictions and things like that. And they were going very well. The last clinic we had was for expungements, and we had a line wrapped around the block. People were getting their records expunged that same day.
Wow.
It was really amazing. And now that COVID's happening, we've been doing them virtually on Zoom, which you can understand is like kind of hard. And we have like up to 1,000 people on it sometimes. So it's like, it's kind of crazy, but it's awesome because we have the lawyers on the line and we have people that call in and then they can go direct with the lawyer so that it's private. And yeah, they're all pro bono for the services. Advocate for families with, child abuse, domestic abuse, which has been a big thing during COVID. People being stuck at home, the domestic abuse has just skyrocketed. And then most recently with this, we've been paying for a lot of bail funds with protesters, supplying medics to be on the street during the protests as well.
Do you have a specific role within the organization at the minute?
So I'm the director of communications, but with Teresa being my mom, and she's the face of it. People that first started following us, she was the one they saw on the streets. She's the one that's organized the biggest protests we've had in Portland. When we had not our President's Day, which was the first protest that Portland had. Now Portland's like known as a protest city, but it wasn't like that. A few years ago is when it all really came up, and we were at the forefront of that.
Is the organization based on, like, is it taking things from groups and stuff that came from the past, or is it like servicing the needs that are there now? Obviously it is, like, but are you drawing things from like others or like activists or revolutionary groups that came before?
I wouldn't say. I mean, I know my mom was inspired by the Black Panthers, because even though people, of course they're going to say, there's different ways of looking at, well, this group did this group did that. Black Panthers fed and clothed so many communities, registered so many people to vote, and she's pretty much stayed on that focus, as well as Martin Luther King's nonviolent direct action, because we really do believe in, disengaging, staying forward. And, during these protests, that's a big problem is, you have people that are not there for the cause. So when you are organizing a protest, it's easy to let other voices kind of overcome yours, unless you're really staying tight as a unit and actually organized,
And how does the group fund all your activities and stuff like that?
Oh, it's like from donations.
Really? Wow.
We're completely grassroots. We are a 501c3, so we do tax deductible donations. But yeah, it's completely community funded.
That's a whole other element of trying to keep things going above water whenever you're dependent on donations and people to come and get on board.
Yeah, we don't rely on any large interests because we don't want, we are the only ones that run Don't Shoot Portland, are Black-led women, and we don't want, it's so much to explain, but like I was saying with nonprofits and how they can seem as if they're going to help, but it's actually a red flag that you should look at when you see a nonprofit pop up, or even some of the big ones that are still around that people don't really know are actually not good, and they get a lot of money because people don't know about smaller organizations doing the work. So I think we are really just focused on trying to be in our communities and be present so that there's no other interference,
to kind of try and keep it as transparent as possible.
Absolutely.
And the unfortunate kind of events that led us to be talking today have kicked off it's like an uprising across America. And George Floyd's murder, it's not an isolated incident, and it just happens to be the thing that has set it off now. Yeah. But what has it been like in the last number of years? And you mentioned Donald Trump coming to office. I don't know if that's kind of like a watershed moment, or kind of that things have changed since then. But what has the environment been like for you and your friends and family living there?
I would definitely say, and it's crazy because when I told my mom this, she was kind of surprised. But I definitely have dealt with racism my entire life. It's not every single day, even when I didn't recognize it, but I really was living in privilege up until a few months, when Donald Trump became president. I still was living in this privileged world of thinking that I didn't have to be political, and thinking that, I don't want to, get into this, and, the government, there's nothing I can do anyway. They're going to, Trump's going to do this, or I can vote for whoever I want, but it doesn't matter. And I had this sort of pessimistic attitude and outlook. And I realized that in itself was privilege. And I had no idea. We talk about white privilege and things like that, but a lot of us are simply, by trying to ignore the matter or pretend it doesn't have anything to do with us, it's making it worse. This is all very intersectional. And I think the more that we're able to acknowledge that, it's going to be hard. Life has definitely been an eye-opener for me since feeling like that, since realizing oh, wow, I am political. Everything is political. I have to do something. So, it's tough. Every day is just sort of a roller coaster. And especially with what's going on now, it's this one incident sparked, a global uprising at this point. I've been seeing in Berlin and London, and I think it's incredibly inspiring and beautiful that we've got this momentum. And I really hope that it doesn't slow down because, you can agree with the riots and the looting or, disagree, but Stonewall, the LA riots, the Door Rebellion, the Stamps riot, Tea Party, riots have happened, and there's been revolution that follows directly behind it. So these times right now are just I'm seeing so many people jump in and get engaged. Mostly I'm just proud of my friends who, usually in a scroll culture, we don't want to post things that might take away from what our friends on the other side of the screen might think. I don't know. But I'm really proud of all my friends because people have been speaking out, and our news feeds aren't going back to normal. And I am really proud and overwhelmed with that right now.
Most people probably heard of George Floyd's murder or seeing it through social media channels. And when the several videos were going viral, how did things kick off over there in terms of protests and the reaction to that?
So I know when the videos first started circulating, because we had before this, it was Ahmaud Arbery, and he was a black man in Georgia who was murdered taking a jog in his neighborhood by two white supremacists, and that was filmed as well. That video started being shared and shared. The hashtags followed. Then it was a little silence, and then when this happened, it just became like a complete uproar. And I started realizing, I'm still practicing social distancing. I'm quarantining. I have not been at any protests. So what Don't Shoot Portland has been doing is we compiled a mutual aid spreadsheet of resources so that even though we're not there physically, we can do that. And we had an online rally. But aside from that, we are still seeing, like, when I do go out in the real world, it's changed. Like, there is so much, George Floyd and I Can't Breathe and, stores covered in graffiti. And it's kind of crazy.
Is there a sense of revolution in the air at the minute, or what's the atmosphere over there?
I don't really go outside here. It's hard. So, I don't know. Like, every time I go outside, I'm like face mask on. I'm like forcing the dog to, get her poops on, and then I'm out. I'm like, okay, let's go. But like I said, just the other day when I went outside and I saw all the graffiti, and there was something in the air. Like, it just felt really still.
Seeing a video the other day with what seemed like a white person that had a mask on and that was carrying an umbrella was smashing windows in a store or something like that. And is there a sense that there's possibly people infiltrating the protest to try and turn them violent on purpose?
Absolutely. And, there's that's been happening for so long. And I'm proud of myself because usually I don't use Facebook. It's just platform for all my old friends and family, and somehow my friend's family is on there, So I try to keep it like rainbows and clouds because Facebook is very combative, And when I started seeing it shared and whatnot, I went on there and I was like, hey, everyone, we're sharing these videos and it's kind of like snuff at this point. Like, are we going to do something? Are we going to normalize the fact that we can watch a murder anytime we want online? And I started noticing a big reaction after I said something like that.
Where do you think that things are going at the minute in terms of the movement that's gathering pace all over America? And as you said, it's kind of spreading to other countries around Europe and whatnot. What direction is the movement going in at the minute, in your opinion?
I think this momentum is unreal. This is a global uprising, and I just really hope that we can continue with this. And then whenever everyone is kind of, done being on the front, it's a lot of adrenaline right now. So people are going to get tired. It's emotionally taxing and draining. It's traumatizing as well. Some people are voluntarily jumping into this cause and they don't realize they're introducing themselves to new trauma, So I hope that we can keep this momentum going. I know some people are probably going to drop out, but I honestly think that this is a catalyst for change. On top of COVID and, people losing their jobs, and some people have never hit rock bottom in their lives, and this is sort of their closest version to that. So I think that combined with what's going on is we're ready for something new. We want to see change in our lifetimes,
Why do you think that racism is so prevalent in American society, and especially with forces of the authority like the police service and stuff like that?
So in my Facebook banters and stuff, I've been trying to educate folks with links because they're like, I want to see the proof in the pudding, And I'm like, okay, fine. I started researching how the U.S. got its police force, and they were pretty much slave patrol cars, they would capture runaway slaves and property. And that hasn't really changed today. I believe that America was founded on, it was designed by racist white men, and it's working exactly as it was intended to. And I think people are starting to realize that it's a lot of unlearning for us. It's a pyramid. of white supremacy that we've been dealing with every day. And I think America is just now starting to wake up. And that's why race is more prevalent, is because people are starting to be like, wow, this really does affect me. I didn't realize that, tokenism was a thing, or saying I'm not political was a thing. I was a part of that group that was, making this worse by saying, oh, I'm not political, And when I looked back and I realized, I was one of the only Black girls in groups of, my friends, which was fine. My friends weren't racist. They didn't treat me any certain way, But when I looked back, I realized, am I going to have a Black daughter and she's not going to grow up having any friends that look like her? She's not going to grow up looking at television, seeing girls that look like her either. I mean, actually, we're doing really well, so I'm excited for that. But you know what I mean? Like, to even have that thought of like, oh, I'm going to have to explain to my child, hey, this is what a racist is. This is what a Nazi is. This is what oppression is. This is what Donald Trump does. Yes, he's our president, and just the thought of having those conversations, I think it scares people. And I think we want to change that. I just thought back on what you were saying, because I had branched off. I'm sorry, I trailed off. But you had mentioned the agitators at the protests in the video. Man, there are so many videos right now. There's a video of a guy. Actually, there's several videos of this, but in Dallas, there's someone who's filming. He's like, hey, we just saw a pallet of bricks being laid downtown in front of a giant glass building. Then there's similar videos in Denver, here in Portland, in Dallas. It's like there's some, there's agent provocateur going on,
That has some similarities with the way that the CIA brought in crack cocaine into a lot of the neighborhoods when the Black Panthers were at their peak.
Exactly. This isn't the first time that, and what that means is that this is working. They're trying all the tricks in the book to try to get people to fight or be like, well, you can protest all you want, but once you start looting things, I can't tell you how many times I've had to interrupt my scrolling and be like, I have time to educate. Let's go. I'm like, let's please try to keep the focus. This is what they want, is for people to kind of fall off the cause and just think that it's a bunch of looting or whatever. No, this is some real change.
That thing that you said, mentioned about educating, seems to be a really important part of the reason of the fact that social media is playing such an important part in it. And that's where a lot of people are getting their information from, is through their feeds. And just even when I was scrolling through Instagram and Facebook earlier on, I would say more so now than after any of the other incidents of police brutality or murder that have come in the past, there seems to be more educational posts and things like that going around on social media now. Would that be right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's people trying to say, hey, this is not another hashtag. Please, let's educate ourselves. And I love that, because it is very easy to not know how you can get involved or not know how you can change something. But we have been putting it one of our big things, in addition to social justice and art. We really believe in civic participation. We want to engage children and youth as soon as they're able, learn that these people work for you. There's no reason that we should feel oppressed or intimidated by any sort of legal processes or systems. And I think the more we're able to educate folks, it's how could you not feel empowered to do something? You have all the tools. And people say that, Google it, learn something. We have the internet. But that's easy for you to say. But if you don't know where to start, all you are going to do is share and repost things. It's your only way of being able to say, I acknowledge you, but I don't know what to do. So, yeah, there's a lot of education going on. And I love it. It's so great.
A big movement for change like that seems to be, it sort of have two sides, where you're putting out educational materials and helping to bring people around to a better way of viewing things. And then on the other side, there's helping to bring people together to make institutional change. The system of prisons that you guys have out there, that sounds quite similar to what you were saying earlier on about people profiting from institutional racism. It just seems like a massive, massive thing to have to try and change. Do you think that's a system that can be changed and will be changed?
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, it's only starting small right now with educating. The more people, even if I don't know, none of us know what's going to happen with how things have been going. They've been getting exponentially worse, and, the country's on fire right now. We still have people on the ground, but regardless of that, I think we're going to continue to educate and learn. And yeah, that's going to change. The school to prison pipeline it's unreal, and I think COVID-19 really illuminated that as well. The fact that they were telling people, social distance, and you can't in a prison. And there were videos being taken within the prison of the conditions. Those went viral here in America, and there started being some sort of changes, but that is a very big focus, is prison abolition.
What are the other big changes that need to happen in society to make it a more just place for people to live in?
Oh man, there's so much. Our main focus is right now here in Portland. Like I told you, we're driving the lead out of schools because the city of Portland's water supply was poisoned. It gets poisoned quite often. We have very bad water. Our graduation rates are it's like ranked number 50 in the country. We've got to continue educating. We have to continue real outreach in the neighborhoods of the children that need it. Not just these programs where we don't know what they're learning or if they're going to be protected. We need to make sure that we're actually equipping our communities with what they need. That's all I can say. Like, what I try to do is I told my friend this the other day. She was like, how do you do this? Like, because I want to try and be better and I want to work, and I know you've been doing this work. What can I do? And she's like, I feel like what I'm doing is not enough. And I'm like, honestly, all you can do is try to change one mind at a time. And that is such an overwhelming thought. It's like, oh my God, one mind at a time. Can we speed this up? But that's the best advice I can give, is just like being able to engage directly and educate and, get involved in the political process. I think we can really make change. Like, I think it's real. I mean, we've got to burn down the patriarchy. We have to dismantle all of these things in order to create sustainable social change for everyone. And like I said earlier, this is intersectional. You have to care about the things that you don't think affect you. Because once you do stand up for it, that's what makes us all stronger. That's where the real change happens. When we move as a unit, that is what is going to make change, not with division. And that's why the media is trying to be so, confusing right now, because we've got cops in some cities, kneeling now after all weekend and, hundreds of protests. We've seen them tear gassing people. We've seen them throwing rubber bullets before protesters even get violent. And that's what starts the riots. Our cops starting to tear gas and rubber bullets. But now we're starting to see, in the last couple of days, I've only seen it, officers kneeling down as if, please, don't. It's like, I will never forget the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that officer kneeled on George Floyd's neck. How about that? And that's another tactic of white supremacy, if you tell me. And I don't think I'm reaching. I think that that's bullshit. And for them to be in our faces trying to kneel as if, let's just all stop. Not all cops are bad. I'm sorry. You can be a good person and try to be in law enforcement thinking you're going to make change. But you cannot make good in a system that was created to destroy and oppress Black and brown lives. You know what I mean?
The police service needs to change drastically or be abolished and restarted or something like that. Do you think that as this thing gathers pace, is it possible that the energy of the whole movement at the minute can be directed at impacting such a big change in American society?
Absolutely. I don't think we need police reform. I think we need the abolition of police. We need to figure out something better. This is just, I think it's going to change, though, because if anyone gets anything out of this, we're realizing that the police force started in a way that wasn't even for the benefit of us all. It was built to protect the status quo, as many things in America were. So I think now that people are starting to be educated and engaged, we can really start to dismantle it. I do believe that. Because once you're woken up to the truth, ignorance is bliss. You can't tell me once you find out how evil the roots of what you know are, you can't go back and change that, Mm-hmm. It's hard to be dismissive once you have the tools to be great.
And how are things being reported in the media out there? Do you feel like they're being reported fairly or biased?
Well, I actually don't have cable or anything. I only have Netflix and Hulu. So I watched Unicorn Riot, for all of my frontline coverage. And if you haven't heard of them, they're really great. They've been doing the work for a long time. Unbiased media coverage by comrades, for comrades. And I've been watching some streams there. I don't know what the media is reporting. It seems like the media is telling the truth about like white supremacy groups being linked to certain protests and political agitators and things like that. So, I see when people share shit on Facebook, but like I said, I try to keep scrolling on Facebook and I just try to engage with people because there's too many of my best friend from high school's racist grandpa that likes to, go on rants, and I can't delete everyone in one day, so I scroll through and I do see people sharing things on the media that seem to have a variety, at least. Like, I don't see anything one-sided.
You mentioned yesterday when we were just setting this podcast up that you were being the kind of point of contact for people who were being arrested during the protests and stuff like that. Is that something that you're able to talk about a little bit?
Yeah. We're always paying for funeral costs for families, victims of gun violence. We're always sending money for aid for families, protesters, people that are wrongfully detained by ICE, things like that. So we're always giving money to sources like that. But once the uprising started, it was like left and right people being thrown in jail. And my mom, like I said, she's the face of Don't Shoot. Until recently, I moved back to Portland. I was living in Denver for a while. I moved back to Portland in August to sort of take over and alleviate some of it because she had been on the front lines for so long. And but people still, as soon as anything happens, my mom's phone will ring at 5 a.m. It'll ring at 2 a.m. It'll ring at midnight. Families crying if they've just lost their son. They don't know who to call. They don't have a lawyer. They know to call my mom. So she is like nonstop, all hours of the night. So since I started taking that over, we have spent like $17,000 bailing people out in the last week. And that's not just in Portland. That's in Chicago, Minneapolis, Dallas, Phoenix, LA, San Diego, New York. That's literally not even the last week. That's like 4 or 5 days. And I'm like, I just took over the finances and stuff. I'm like, Mom, listen, you've been doing this a long time. I can learn QuickBooks. I got this. And I'm just like, it's so much to go through, like not only is it just nonstop people hitting me up on the Don't Shoot site, hitting us up in our inboxes. And I'm also like in constant communication with our lawyer team, trying to get them in the right places. I mean, it's a lot to keep up with, but I think it's beautiful because we are getting people, as soon as they're in jail, we're like on it. You're out. You're out. Bond's been posted. Bam, bam, bam. We have people that are just like ready. Like our community is so tight and so down for whatever. We lost someone in Chicago last night, a 19-year-old whose last footage, he was spraying a water gun at the cops and they tackled him. So there's a video of him getting tackled by 10 cops and then dragged off. No one saw him. I posted on the Instagram. We found him, like pretty much immediately, like a couple hours later. He had been in police custody, but had never been booked. So his mother couldn't find him. Everyone was calling. We started spreading the numbers. We found him. He wasn't in the jails, but we found him.
Is there a sense of coming together there within the community because of all this that's happening?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been speaking to, like, there's families and people around the country that I've become so close with that, we will never meet. And they're, like, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And while I'm there with them and I am present, there are 200 more people that are emailing and texting and calling me that are saying the same thing. And I have to be there for all of them. It's like very hard, but I think it's so important that people know that if they do take this chance and they do speak up about what's happening to them, instead of being like, well, nothing's going to change. There are people that are going to help them. Like, we jump up and we're like, what do you need? How can we make it happen? We're going to make this happen.
Yeah.
Like, I love what we can do for community. It inspires me to just keep going, even if it is tragic, That
kind of brings me to a question that I've wanted to ask you about how people can best show solidarity with the movement and what's happening over there at the minute in other countries?
I've just been seeing online, like in Berlin, they were marching the U.S. Embassy. In London, they were peacefully protesting. And I just, like I said, I've only seen it online, but I think it's incredible how people have been reaching out, asking what they can do. And that's sort of why we created the spreadsheet, is because people from all around the world were hitting us up on social media, being like, hey, like, I see what's happening. I want to do something. I'm not even there though. And like, it doesn't matter if you're there. Like, that's perfect because, you can't physically go out and possibly get into, a whole world of, like if you're home in the safety of your home and you still want to help, that to me is very important. That's just as important as the people on the ground. And so when we made that resource sheet, there's bail funds, lawyers. When you go to a protest, you have to, or you should call a number of, we use the National Lawyers Guild, and we write down their phone numbers. We ask people to write them on their arms just in case they get arrested. There are legal observers at most protests wearing neon green hats. That's how you can always find someone that can make sure they're there to witness what's going on. Mm-hmm. It's just good to share these resources because it allows us to have better organizing with like a clear and direct action. It's harder for agitators to join in and, yep, change up your chants. We've had people where, we are strictly peaceful, and we'll have some people come up and, like, Antifa are a group that, they're anti-fascist, and for the big majority, they are, they're great. They are pretty hardcore. They don't mind running ahead of the protest to lay out roadblocks, and they'll put their bodies in front of cars, and I think that's great. But also I've seen some, that kind of draws in another crowd of like just straight anarchy, and those people will join the protest, but they're not leading it. They'll join it, and then once things kind of get to a point where they're agitated or they've been, making eyes at a cop all day, and once it starts getting darker, that cop is going to retaliate because he's been seeing you all day. He's getting kind of pissed off. He knows once it gets dark, he can get you, And that's why we try to stay together. We try to use peaceful chants, but we've been disrupted when we're saying, hands up, don't shoot. Someone will come up, all cops are bastards. You immediately drown that out. You don't let that take over the entire crowd, because once you do, it's a mob mentality. People start breaking stuff. People start getting violent with one another, so it's important that we have these tactics to be able to like really organize safely.
So if somebody is sitting in the house thinking like, what can I do? How can I do something to help? Or how can I even make a positive contribution to the conversation in some way? And how can I best do that? Like, what can people do?
Definitely donate to Black-led organizations, minority-owned organizations that are doing work in their cities and their spaces towards racial injustice. Like the momentum here is crazy. We are doing well with donations and getting them out to our community, but you don't have to donate in America. Donate. Like, I would love to know what's going on in Ireland with your politics and government, and I'm sure there's resources there too, because it all starts where with you are, because that's part of the collective. Like, we need to support the people that are doing the work, no matter where they are. If you know people that are in their communities, grassroots organizing, help them continue to do that. Help them continue to make legislative change. It's so important that we have people that are able to articulate and get into those political processes and speak for us,
And specifically to Ireland, there has been an increase in visibility and I think support as well to the campaign to get rid of a system that we have that's called direct provision. And it's when people from other countries come to Ireland to seek asylum. It's just barely more than an internment camp where people are stuck in these centres for a very long time and kind of just put on indefinite pause and just left there for years. And it's a racist system. And if people are listening to this in Ireland, then to follow your advice and to become active in something that's local, then that's a very, I think, positive campaign to get behind to help end that system of direct provision.
Y'all got to organize, get together and start organizing, because you can tear that shit down easy. Like, I'm there with you. I want to learn more about it too, so that we can share on our end and make it. Like I said, there's so much global attention right now, and these issues aren't isolated. These are all of our issues. So, I would like to learn more.
How can people follow what you guys are doing?
Don'tshootpdx.org. Our social medias are updated regularly. Our website also, that's where all of our programming is. So we make our programming available online. We will be doing another online rally against white supremacy, which basically I just kind of go on and I talk about our work, how we organize, and how we can make changes like directly without having to be in the protest. Because I don't really want to condone anyone going out right now. Like if you are, go for it. But I do have immunocompromised loved ones, and so I'm choosing to stay self-quarantined. But I want people to still feel like they can learn and engage. And if you do decide to go out to a protest, I want them to be ready, because there's certain things that you don't know until you actually organize with real people. Like I was saying earlier, when you need to chant over agitators, like we'll say, stay together, stay tight. And that means look around you, because people are trying to separate us,
Yeah.
So there's certain tactics I think are important for people, because if you're going to go out and fight for our rights, then we want you to be well prepared.
Just as you mentioned, your social media accounts, and if people do want to get material that they can share, there's loads of stuff going up on the Don't Shoot Instagram page. I noticed that that people can share directly from there under their stories, about saying that you're not political and then just forgetting about it. But in actual fact, you can't go outside of the house without being political in reality. Because where you go shopping is political, and how you get to work and where you work and all these things.
Yes, exactly. And actually that we're calling for people on our next online rally. I was going to talk to people about this, about divesting and unfollowing. Like divestment is so important right now. And a lot of people don't think about that. They're like, well, it's my social media life, or I want to follow this account, and they post cool things. If you are being silent at all during like our civil rights movement, like this is for all of us. Like without Stonewall, LGBTQ rights would not be where they are today. Like this is some real shit. Excuse my, And if you're not speaking up, if you're not using your platform or your privilege or your voice in any matter, I don't care if you have one friend on Facebook. If I haven't seen you post about it, I'm going to hit you up and I'm going to be like, listen, we need to talk, I think it's so important for us to, divest and unfollow from people that are not using their platforms. As a little game, I went last night on Instagram and I was like, I'm just going to look up any fashion profile. I'm just going to look, whoever. So I type in Forever 21, and they're acting like rainbows and butterflies. I go to the last post and I click the comments and everyone's like, can y'all say something? My dollars want to know. And then it's like going viral, like hundreds of people commenting back and forth. If I don't hear from Forever 21, y'all are losing me forever. And then Forever 21 made a statement, we are so sorry and we stand in solidarity. And everyone's like, nope, you missed me. Delete, delete, delete. It's like, we really do need to demand that sort of action from the people that we give our money to.
The point that you made just is like that even if people are sitting at home, there's still a really important and positive role that people can play. And that quote, if you're indifferent in cases of injustice, it means you're taking the side of the oppressor. I guess one of the reasons why I wanted for us to have a chat in the first place, it was that so that people can see that they can make a difference by just speaking up and standing up in any way that they can, whatever shape that can take. I think that the important thing here for people, if they're listening to this, is to realize that like now is the time when there's an uprising happening in America and against police brutality and the institutional violence that's happening there. And now is the time to show solidarity for that movement.
Absolutely. And that's also why people are, defending, they're like, this is why we're looting, is because we're trying to, get their attention. They obviously don't care when people peacefully protest. They obviously don't care when they kill unarmed people, but they do seem to care when you set shit on fire, And, but yeah, I think that's very important. And also this is just making it like, this is the tip of the iceberg. We all have so much work to do, like when it comes to unfollowing companies because they don't speak out against racial injustices. We need to stop utilizing slave labor as well. We need to start being more eco-friendly. We need to stop with the fast fashion. We need to stop so many things. And this is just what's taking prevalence right now, But we need to start really vetting who we give our money to and who we support with our dollars. And that's a lot. People are not going to be happy about, oh, I can't do this anymore. I can't go to Forever 21. Oh, I can't, get an iPhone. I'm trying to unlearn this too. And it's hard, but we have to acknowledge it. We have to completely start to make changes towards divesting. This is just one small step. Eventually, we should all be growing our own food and, just trying to be on our own level without the influence of like these big corporations that kind of take advantage and,
Which that goes straight back to the point that you were saying about you can't say I'm not political, because if you're spending your money with someone who is unwilling to speak up against oppression or who's having a direct hand in it, then that is very political.
Yeah. Like that's the stance you're taking then,
Yeah.
You have to be political.
What do you think about where there's a Black Lives Matter post and somebody posts underneath it, all lives matter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen that. I've also seen some really good analogies for it too. It's like, if there are a row of houses on the street and only one is burning, you would say, this house is burning. And everyone's like, oh my gosh. I never saw that. And I'm like, oh my God. So I just think sharing like graphics and infographics are important for that reason too, because it's really easy for people to just kind of like pick and choose what part of your statement they want to agree with, And I think it's easier when you have one blanket statement on an image that can be easily shared that sort of explains why. Like people need it to be broken down. I don't know why. It's like black people are literally saying, stop killing us. And we're like, well, if he hadn't been, or that target, I'm like think beyond the bigger, like, please look into this, I think people are waking up, but it's still going to take some time for people to really, all lives matter. It's like, you think I'm really saying like all lives don't? I don't understand people that actually think that.
When you say Black Lives Matter, it doesn't mean that white lives don't matter.
And I think it's crazy that people think that's what it means. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, what? How could we have a cause when we're trying to like hate on other races? That defeats our purpose of what we're trying to do. But yeah,
I suppose there's a certain element of kind of propaganda against the Black Lives Matter movement that goes that feeds that narrative of like, oh yeah, look, this is Black Lives Matter. Like they think that white lives don't matter, and then they put that out there, and then that to try and undermine the movement in a way.
But I absolutely think it does. Yeah, but like I said, once people can sort of look beyond that and really see the meaning of the statement, I think it'll change a lot of people's minds. And like I said, it's one mind at a time. It's so slow, but I think it's all we've got.
How do you balance having this like massive job and undertaking and being in a struggle like this that's going to go on for a long time to come, and still look after yourself?
So I really think this is a balance of people really showing solidarity and support, and it inspires me even when I'm like dealing with all of this trauma, because it's really hard and it is emotionally taxing, but I would say the outcome is just so worth it, and it's beautiful to make change. And of course, cannabis, because if I was not smoking weed every day, I don't know. It really helps, me put things into perspective and helps me take a deep breath and really think through, my days and put things in order, because it can get so overwhelming for me, And when I told you I'm getting calls about people being arrested, their kids not being found, people being murdered, not being able to pay for a funeral. Those things come up a lot, sometimes daily. And it is very hard. But when I'm able to meditate and use my medicine, like I'm more of a vessel for change, So yeah, I meditate, I consume marijuana, and I read good books, and I just, I try to love people and make change, really.
Are you reading any good books at the minute?
Yes, let's see. I just finished a lot of Murakami. I like him a lot, and I'm reading James Baldwin right now just because I think he needs to be revisited a lot. And I don't know if you read James Baldwin, but I would suggest Another Country. It is a very good book, and it's a lot of intersectionality, race, sex, love, poverty, and he's just like, he's amazing. He's got a really great writing style. So I recommend everyone, if you don't know what to do and you want to support somehow, please read some James Baldwin, and you will find a world of perspective that you've been needing.
I know that like a lot of people who will be listening to this will be very keen to like show and share their solidarity with you guys through the times that you're going through at the minute. And you've talked a bit about how people can do that if they want to do it online. Like also like just sending good vibes across.
Thank you so much
To you guys.
Yeah.
And
let's try to make this, keep the universal momentum going. Like, I think this is a really beautiful energy that we have right now. And if it's cultivated in the correct way, we can make constructive change.
That's another really positive thing that's coming out of this very bad situation, is the fact that there is a like worldwide conversation happening. Like we're talking now, and many of other people are reaching out to each other and seeing the similarities in their respective struggles, and actual fact probably realizing that in some ways it's the same struggle.
It's important to have different perspectives and different people's voices, not just the people that know how to speak, or, you know what I mean? Like, it just needs to be regular people having a conversation from different parts of the world over the same issues. And then we can be like, you know what? Oh my God, they're right. Why did I say I wasn't political? So yeah, I'm just thankful that that we were connected through Devin, and we could make this happen, because I think this is a very good conversation, and I'm excited to share it with everyone too. And yeah, thank you so much.